My wife mocked my low salary. At a family dinner after I paid off her debts. So I closed our joint account and watched her world collapse. I'm a 33-year-old guy, and I've never been rich, but I've always been reliable. I grew up in a small town where every dollar meant something. My parents weren't the kind who took vacations or bought new cars. They were the type who fixed broken things instead of replacing them. From them, I learned that stability isn't glamorous, but it's the foundation that keeps life from falling apart. When I met Olivia, she was everything I wasn't: elegant, confident, and magnetic. She came from a family that didn't think twice before ordering wine that cost more than my weekly groceries. At first, I was intimidated, but she liked that about me. She said I was different, that I made her feel grounded, safe, and seen. For a guy like me, hearing that from a woman like her felt like winning the lottery. Our early days were full of small joys: cheap dinners, long drives, dreams of building a simple life together. I remember her laughing once, saying, "You make me feel like money doesn't matter." And I believed her. I thought love was enough to bridge every gap between us. But slowly, I began to notice the cracks. When we'd visit her parents, I could see it in her mother's forced smile and her father's polite nods. They thought I wasn't good enough. Olivia would brush it off, saying, "They just need time." Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was starting to believe them. I told myself it didn't matter, that love was stronger than pride or status. But as time went on, I'd realized something I wish I'd understood earlier. Money doesn't just buy comfort. Sometimes it buys power. And when one person has it, the other is left trying to prove their worth in ways that love alone can't fix. The first year of our marriage felt like a partnership built on love and trust. I was proud of that. I worked long hours at my job in logistics. Steady pay, nothing flashy, but it kept us comfortable. Olivia had left her corporate job after some burnout, saying she wanted to find herself. I supported that without hesitation. That's what partners do, right? Not long after, I learned about her student loans and credit card debt, numbers that made my chest tighten. But Olivia cried, saying she felt ashamed and didn't want to burden me. So, I stepped in. I told her we'd handle it together, that money wasn't everything. I worked extra shifts, cut out small luxuries, and created a plan to clear her debt. Every payment felt like progress, like I was building us a clean slate. Sometimes, I'd come home exhausted, smelling like engine grease, and she'd greet me with a kiss and a soft, "You're my rock." Those moments kept me going. I didn't notice the subtle changes then. The way she started talking about her old friends' lives, their houses, their vacations, or how she'd sigh when I mentioned saving instead of spending. One night, after I proudly told her I'd made the last debt payment, I expected gratitude. Instead, she smiled faintly and said, "That's great, babe, but maybe now we can start living like adults." Her tone was light, but something in her eyes felt different. Like paying off her debt wasn't a victory. It was just the end of an inconvenience. I brushed it off, telling myself she was just tired. But deep down, I sensed something changing. I had paid for her peace, her freedom. Yet somehow, I felt smaller in her eyes. And soon, I'd realized that in trying to lift us both up, I'd unknowingly set the stage for my own fall. It started subtly. Little shifts that, at first, I tried to ignore. Olivia began spending more time out with her friends, the same ones she used to call shallow for their obsession with status. She'd come home talking about their new cars, weekend trips, and expensive handbags. When I'd mention our budget, she'd roll her eyes and say, "You act like we're broke." One Saturday, I came home early from work and found a stack of shopping bags on the couch. Designer labels, things I knew we couldn't afford. She smiled and said, "Relax, babe, it was on sale." But when I checked the credit card statement later that night, I felt my stomach twist. The charges weren't small. I stayed quiet, not because I was afraid to argue, but because I didn't want to believe the person I loved could be careless with something I worked so hard for. When we visited her parents, the tension deepened. Her father clapped me on the shoulder and joked, "Still working that same job, huh? Reliable as ever." His tone wasn't kind. It was patronizing. Olivia laughed with them, brushing off my embarrassment like it was nothing. That night, I lay awake beside her, wondering when reliable had become an insult. I tried to fix things: date nights, honest talks, small surprises. But the more I gave, the less it seemed to matter. Olivia started talking about wanting more from life, and though she never said it outright, I knew she meant more money. Then, one evening, she told me she wanted to host a family dinner to celebrate paying off her debts and our new chapter. I agreed, hoping it would remind her that love meant more than status. I had no idea that dinner would become the moment everything I'd built, everything I'd sacrificed, would begin to unravel in front of everyone. The night of the dinner, I remember standing in front of the mirror, adjusting my only good shirt. Olivia looked stunning in a new dress, one I hadn't seen before, and for a moment, I felt proud. I thought maybe this dinner would be a turning point, a chance to remind her family that we were strong, that we made it work through love and hard work. Her parents' house was beautiful, marble floors, soft lighting, the kind of place that made me feel out of place the second I stepped in. Olivia floated through the room like she belonged there. I stayed close, offering polite smiles while everyone talked about stocks, vacations, and business ventures. Then it happened. Over dinner, her brother joked about me still driving my old car, and Olivia, without missing a beat, laughed and said, "Well, someone's got to keep it humble. My husband's paycheck makes sure we stay down to earth." The table erupted in laughter. Even her mother chuckled, sipping her wine. I froze. My face burned as everyone kept laughing, but Olivia didn't stop. She added, "He's reliable, though. Not everyone can say that about their partner." Her tone was mocking, not affectionate. The same word she once used as praise now sounded like an insult. I forced a smile, pretending it didn't sting. But inside, something cracked. I couldn't even taste the food after that. Every laugh felt like a nail in my dignity. When the dinner ended, I quietly excused myself, helping clear plates just to escape the noise. On the drive home, Olivia chatted like nothing had happened. When I stayed silent, she sighed. "Oh, come on. It was a joke. Don't be so sensitive." That night, lying beside her, I couldn't sleep. The woman I'd once believed saw me as her rock had just turned me into her punchline. And for the first time, I wondered if the love I'd built my life around was already gone. The morning after the dinner, I woke up with a tight knot in my chest. Olivia was already in the kitchen, humming like nothing had happened, making coffee and scrolling through her phone. I said nothing, just sat at the table, watching her move with ease, like the entire evening hadn't humiliated me in front of her family. My pride felt bruised in a way words couldn't fix. Over the next few days, I noticed more of her subtle disregard. She planned expensive outings without asking, mentioning casually that we could splurge a little since the debts are gone. She would brush off my concerns about savings with a sarcastic, "You worry too much." Even our friends noticed. One of them joked, "You're still holding it down while she's living the high life, huh?" I smiled weakly, but inside, resentment simmered. I started watching our joint finances closely. Every small transfer, every automatic payment, I tracked it. That's when I realized Olivia had been quietly moving money into her personal account, supposedly 4 bills, but the amounts were higher than usual. I didn't confront her, not yet. I wanted to understand the pattern before reacting. I also began pulling back emotionally, deliberately. I stopped volunteering for her errands, stopped covering her impulsive purchases, and minimized conversations that could lead to arguments. She noticed. One night, she snapped, "Why are you being so cold all of a sudden?" I shrugged, pretending it was stress from work. But behind the facade, I was planning. I didn't want to explode. I wanted her to feel the same instability she'd just casually mocked. I started quietly creating my own safety net, moving money into accounts she didn't have access to, setting up protections she wouldn't anticipate. I kept pretending everything was fine, all while silently preparing. She was blissfully unaware that the balance of power was about to shift. And in the back of my mind, a thought kept echoing. If she wanted to mock my paycheck, she would soon see the consequences of crossing me. It all came to light one Saturday evening. I had gone to check our emails for something work-related, and one message caught my eye. It was from a realtor, addressed solely to Olivia. The subject line read, "Apartment lease confirmation, downtown penthouse." My heart sank. I clicked it open, and there it was. A lease agreement for a luxurious apartment downtown, fully furnished, scheduled to start in just a month. I felt a mix of anger, disbelief, and betrayal. She hadn't mentioned it once. No. "Look, I found something cute." No. "What do you think?" Nothing. And then it clicked. The late night calls, the whispered plans with friends, the subtle dismissals of my concerns about extra spending. Olivia had been planning this move behind my back, pretending our debt-free celebration was a joint victory, when in reality, she was preparing to leave our shared life for her version of freedom. That night, I confronted her. "Olivia, what is this?" I held the screen between us, my hands trembling. She looked startled, then laughed softly, nervously. I'm just exploring options. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? You're signing a lease for a penthouse without telling me? My voice shook with frustration. I just wanted a fresh start. You're so tied to your routines, your budget. I thought you wouldn't understand. Understanding? I felt the floor drop beneath me. The woman I loved, the one who once said I made her feel safe, had been planning a life that didn't include me. I realized in that moment that all the sacrifices, the extra shifts, the sleepless nights paying off her debts, had bought her comfort, not gratitude. I stayed silent, staring at her. Inside, I made a quiet decision. If she wanted to see what life without my stability looked like, I would give her that reality. But I wouldn't act impulsively. I would wait, plan, and let her feel the weight of her choices. For the first time, I wasn't just hurt. I was calculating. And deep down, I knew this twist would change everything. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. All the humiliation, the secret spending, the betrayals, it had to end. Quietly, I logged into our joint bank account. Every cent I had worked for, every saved dollar, I moved into a separate account only I could access. Then, I called the bank to close the joint account. When Olivia checked her cards that afternoon, panic spread across her face. The payment for her nail appointment bounced. The pre-order for her designer bag didn't go through. Even the electricity bill was declined. She turned to me, eyes wide, voice trembling. What did you do? I poured coffee for myself, calm as ever. I closed the account, I said quietly. We'll manage our finances separately from now on. Her hand shook as she fumbled with her phone, calling the bank repeatedly. You can't do this. We're married. That's not fair, she shouted. But fairness had nothing to do with it. This was about showing her the weight of her choices, the chaos that came from treating our shared life as her playground. I watched her pace around the kitchen, realizing that the safety net she had counted on, the money I'd poured into her debts, the stability I provided, was gone. The apartment lease, the weekend shopping sprees, the carefree lifestyle she had imagined. Suddenly, it all looked impossible without my financial support. I stayed calm, speaking only when necessary. I wanted you to feel what it's like when someone doesn't back you up anymore. My tone was neutral, but my heart was steady. Olivia's face shifted from shock to fury, then desperation. I didn't offer help. I didn't make excuses. I simply let her confront the consequences of her own choices. That night, lying in bed, I realized something. For the first time, the balance of power had shifted. She had mocked my paycheck, laughed at my sacrifices, and dismissed my worth. Now, she was beginning to understand that stability isn't something you take lightly. The days after I closed the joint account were tense, beyond anything I had imagined. Olivia's panic didn't fade. It intensified. Every swipe of her card was met with decline, every scheduled payment bounced, and every plan she had made for herself felt like it was unraveling in real time. She yelled, cried, bargained, and accused. But I remained calm, almost eerily so. You're being so controlling, she said one evening, her voice sharp, tremors of desperation underneath. This is insane. We're married, and you can't just... I can, I interrupted, keeping my tone low, steady. I can, because you treated our life like it's disposable. You mocked me, my work, everything I've sacrificed to support us. Now it's time you face the reality you've ignored. Her friends and family began to notice her distress. She called her mother, begging for financial help. Her father lectured me, saying I was spiteful and overreacting. But they didn't ask why. They didn't see the countless nights I stayed late, the extra shifts I took, the sleepless anxiety over paying off her debts. All they saw was her frustration and my calm response. Olivia's frustration turned into fear. She realized, bit by bit, that the lifestyle she had assumed was guaranteed was in jeopardy. The apartment she had wanted downtown, unreachable without my financial support. The weekend trips and shopping sprees, gone. The security she relied on had disappeared. I didn't gloat, and I didn't rub it in. I simply stayed firm, letting her process the consequences. But inside, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. Satisfaction for reclaiming my dignity, and sorrow for realizing the person I had loved so deeply had become someone I no longer recognized. By the end of the week, Olivia was visibly shaken. She looked at me with a mixture of anger, confusion, and fear. And for the first time, I saw the realization in her eyes. She had underestimated what it meant to disrespect someone who had given her everything. By the second week after closing the account, Olivia was in full panic mode. Her world, the one she had built on my stability, was crumbling faster than I had anticipated. Bills went unpaid, her credit cards were maxed, and every attempt to maintain her lifestyle ended in rejection. The apartment she had dreamed of? Her deposit bounced. The fancy dinners and spontaneous shopping trips she'd taken for granted were now impossible. She tried calling friends for help, but many of them shrugged her off, saying things like, "You knew what you were doing." Her parents, too, refused to bail her out. The woman who had once laughed at my paycheck was now making frantic phone calls, pleading for loans, and begging anyone to save her from the chaos she had ignored. Meanwhile, I focused on myself. I went to work, came home, and didn't argue. I took long walks in the evenings, feeling the weight of months of humiliation lift slowly off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was reclaiming my sense of control, my peace of mind. She sent me text after text, some apologetic, some desperate, some laced with blame. I read them, felt the sting, but didn't respond. I realized that no amount of explanation could undo the choices she had made. The respect I once had for her, the trust I built into our marriage, had been eroded by her disregard and mockery. One night, she showed up at my apartment, tear-streaked and pleading. I didn't mean it. Please, we can fix this. I can change," she whispered. But I stayed silent, letting her words hang in the air. I wasn't cruel. I just wasn't hers anymore. For the first time, I understood the truth about power and consequences. Olivia had mocked my sacrifices, laughed at my efforts, and ignored my worth. Now, she was facing the reality of a life she thought was untouchable, and there was nothing, or no one, left to save her from it. After days of her frantic texts and unannounced visits, I finally agreed to meet Olivia, not out of forgiveness, but to close the chapter properly. We sat across from each other at a small, quiet cafe, far from the grandeur of her usual world. The air smelled of coffee and rain, and the tension between us was thick, almost suffocating. She started talking immediately, her voice trembling. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. I was stressed. I thought I deserved more," she said, avoiding my eyes. I watched her, noting every hesitation, every micro-expression. I felt nothing but clarity. "You mocked me in front of everyone," I said calmly. "You laughed at my paycheck, at my sacrifices, at everything I've done to support you. Do you know how that feels?" My voice didn't raise, but the weight behind my words made her flinch. She tried to justify it. "It was a joke. You're being so dramatic. I just wanted to live better." I shook my head. "No, you wanted to belittle me while benefiting from everything I provided. That's not a joke. That's betrayal." Her face fell. The confident, charming woman I once loved was now a person stripped of pretense. Her words faltered, and she looked at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. "Do you want to try again?" she asked quietly, almost pleading. I looked at her for a long moment, taking in the fear and regret. "No," I said finally. "You can't undo the things you said, or the way you treated me. Some lessons aren't meant to be forgotten. They're meant to be learned." She slumped, silent. I stood, paid the bill, and walked away. I didn't feel bitterness anymore, just the strange, liberating weight of knowing I had finally reclaimed myself. Weeks passed after that confrontation, and life slowly began to rebuild itself around me. I moved into a small apartment of my own, cozy but mine, a space where I could breathe without the constant tension of judgment or mockery. Work became more than just a paycheck. It became a reminder of what I had achieved on my own terms. Each day, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for years. Olivia tried reaching out occasionally, leaving voicemails and texts, pleading for reconciliation or forgiveness. I read them, sometimes with a pang of nostalgia, sometimes with relief that I no longer had to carry her weight on my shoulders. I realized that true love isn't built on control or dependence. It's built on mutual respect, honesty, and understanding. Friends noticed the change too. They commented on how grounded I seemed, how my confidence had returned. I didn't need validation, but it was nice to see that reclaiming my dignity wasn't invisible to the people who cared about me. I started investing in myself, not just financially, but emotionally. Finding hobbies I had abandoned, reconnecting with family, and learning to value my own happiness. Meanwhile, Olivia's life seemed to be unraveling in ways she hadn't anticipated. Without the safety net she had counted on, she faced the reality of her choices. I heard through mutual friends about her struggles: unpaid bills, evicted apartments, and the collapse of the lifestyle she had once flaunted. I didn't feel joy in her misfortune. It was just the natural consequence of her decisions, a reflection of the imbalance that had existed between us. One evening, she sent a final message. "I hope you're happy. I really do." I smiled softly, typing back nothing. Some closures don't need words. Some victories are silent. And for the first time in years, I truly felt free. I never expected the end of a marriage to feel like a beginning, but that's exactly what it was. Sitting in my new apartment, I often reflect on the months that brought me here. The humiliation, the betrayal, the late nights of worry and sacrifice. Every moment, painful as it was, taught me something about my worth, my boundaries, and what it truly means to be respected. I've learned that love isn't about tolerating mockery or sacrificing yourself endlessly for someone who doesn't appreciate it. It's not about proving your value through money, effort, or silent endurance. It's about mutual respect, shared vision, and emotional support. That realization hit me hardest when I saw Olivia's struggles after she had counted on my stability without gratitude. It was a harsh lesson, but one I needed. Now, I focus on myself. I wake up without the dread of judgment, without the anxiety of someone belittling my efforts. I've started small projects I had shelved for years, reconnected with friends I had neglected, and finally embraced a sense of peace that wasn't tied to anyone else. My life isn't perfect, but it's mine, and it's the first time in a long time that I feel proud of it. Sometimes, I think about confronting her one last time, just to explain everything I learned, but I don't need to. The lessons are mine, and the consequences were hers. I have the satisfaction of knowing that I reclaimed my dignity without stooping to cruelty. If there's one thing I want anyone listening or reading to take away, it's this. Don't let someone's disrespect define your worth. Protect your peace, honor your sacrifices, and recognize when it's time to walk away. Some betrayals aren't meant to be endured. They're meant to teach you that the only life worth living is one where you are valued. I sip my coffee, watch the sunrise, and finally feel it. The calm, steady freedom of someone who has rebuilt themselves from the ground up.